My millionaire grandson visited me and said, "Is the $8,000 a month helping you, Grandma?" I replied, "I have to choose between my medicine and eating, sweetheart." The words had barely left my mouth when I saw his confident smile falter. For a second, he just stared at me, as if I'd said something impossible. But the truth was, my reality had been impossible for far too long. I sat in my tiny dimly lit apartment, the hum of the old refrigerator blending with the faint whistle of wind outside. My hands, thin and veined, trembled slightly as I clutched the bottle of pills. I had counted them 3 times already that day. 7 left. 7 little tablets stood between me and the unbearable chest pain that had become my unwelcome companion for months. The prescription label mocked me. Refill by March 15th. But it was already March 20th. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of 68 long years pressing down on me. I never imagined that at this age, I'd be forced to choose between paying for the medicine that kept me alive or buying food to fill my stomach. My monthly Social Security check barely covered rent, leaving me with scraps for everything else. Pride had kept me from calling my family, but pride didn't pay bills or quiet a racing heartbeat in the middle of the night. On the table beside the pill bottle lay an envelope marked "Final Notice" in thick, angry red letters. The electric company didn't care that I lived on a fixed income. They didn't care about dignity. They wanted payment. I took a slow sip of lukewarm tea, its weak taste matching my energy. That's when I heard the knock at the door. It startled me so much I almost spilled the cup. My heart jumped, but when I peered through the peephole, I froze. There he was, Ethan, my grandson. 28 years old, successful, and the kind of man who looked like life had always gone his way. I hadn't seen him in person in nearly half a year. "Grandma May," he said warmly as I opened the door. His voice carrying the same tone that had melted my heart since he was a messy-haired boy of 5. Only now, he stood there in a perfectly tailored navy suit that probably cost more than my rent for several months. His dark hair was styled just right, his cologne expensive and unfamiliar. "Oh, Ethan," I murmured, smoothing my worn cardigan and forcing a smile despite the heavy exhaustion in my bones. "What a surprise." He stepped forward, wrapping me in a hug. For a moment, I closed my eyes and pretended things were fine, that he wouldn't notice how loose my clothes had become from the weight I'd lost, that he wouldn't sense the fatigue I couldn't shake. "I had a meeting nearby and thought I'd stop in," he said, stepping back and studying my face. "You look tired, Grandma." I waved his words away and motioned for him to sit on my small couch. "Just getting older, dear. Can I make you some tea? Maybe a cookie?" But as I moved toward the kitchen, I saw his gaze catch on the pill bottles lined neatly on the counter. His expression shifted. "Are you taking care of yourself?" "That's a lot of medicine." I felt heat rise in my cheeks. "The doctor says they're necessary. Getting old isn't for the weak, as they say." Ethan glanced around the room, and I realized he was seeing my world differently now. The faded couch, the nearly empty fridge humming loudly, the stack of unpaid bills half hidden under a decorative bowl. He turned back to me, his voice suddenly careful. "The $8,000 I've been sending each month. It's helping, right? For your medications, bills, groceries, everything you need." I froze, the words hitting me like a bucket of cold water. "What?" I asked slowly. His face drained of color. $8,000. Every month. "I send it to Anna, for your care." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Anna. My daughter-in-law. The woman who stopped by occasionally with store-bought cookies and asked how I was doing. The woman who always said Ethan was busy but cared deeply. My voice was barely a whisper. "Ethan, I haven't seen a penny of that money." The air seemed to grow heavy between us. His eyes widened in disbelief, then narrowed as realization settled in. She told me you didn't want money directly. That it would make you uncomfortable. She said she was helping you with everything." I felt the weight of it all pressing harder on my chest. Not just the betrayal, but the years I'd spent thinking I was forgotten, living cold winters without proper heat, skipping meals so I could stretch my prescriptions. 2 years. 2 whole years. "She let me believe you didn't have time for me," I whispered. "And you thought I was being cared for." Ethan's hands clenched into fists. I had never seen his face look like that. Full of hurt, anger, and guilt all at once. "Grandma, this ends now." For the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't in years. hope mixed with a fierce determination. Anna had underestimated me. And she was about to learn just how wrong she'd been. Ethan sat there, his expensive watch catching the dull light from my single lamp, but his eyes, those warm blue eyes I'd always loved, looked clouded, as if he was struggling to breathe. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Grandma, you're telling me you've been living like this, while I've been sending Anna $8,000 a month for you?" His voice cracked on the last word. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "I'm telling you I haven't seen a cent of it, Ethan. Not for medicine. Not for food. Not for anything." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the wall clock, a cheap plastic thing that had been here since before Ethan was born. I stared at my hands in my lap. They looked smaller than I remembered, the skin thinner, almost fragile. I didn't want him to see how much I'd withered, but there was no hiding it now. She visits sometimes," I went on quietly. "Brings me a box of tea, maybe a small plant, and asks how I'm getting along. I always thought she was being kind. I never knew." My voice trailed off, too heavy with disbelief. Ethan's jaw tightened. "She told me you were doing well. Said you were comfortable. She even sent me pictures of groceries she claimed she bought for you. Receipts for medicine, for utilities. She made it sound like she was handling everything for your sake." I almost laughed, but it came out bitter and broken. "Pictures? Oh, Ethan. I never saw those groceries. I've been eating crackers for dinner. Wearing my coat inside because I can't pay the heating bill. That's the reality." He dragged his hands down his face, the way he used to do as a boy when something frustrated him. "God. 2 years. That's over $160,000, Grandma." The number made my stomach twist. I had never seen that much money in my life. I thought of all the nights I'd gone to bed hungry, the mornings I'd skipped medicine to make it last longer, all the times I'd felt unwanted. And all the while, Anna had been telling him I was cared for. Ethan suddenly stood and walked to the window, staring out at the cracked parking lot below. "She lied to me," he said almost to himself. "Not just about the money. About you. She made me think you were too proud to take help from me. His voice broke. "She made me believe you didn't want me around." I felt a sting in my chest, not from my heart this time, but from the ache of knowing how much she'd poisoned between us. "Ethan, sweetheart. She wanted us apart. That's how she kept control." He turned to me then, his eyes shining, not with tears exactly, but with something sharper. "Not anymore. We're going to fix this. And she's going to pay for every single thing she's done to you." Part of me wanted to believe him completely, to lean into the safety his words promised. But another part, the part that had survived these past 2 years, knew that Anna wasn't just going to hand back what she'd stolen. "Be careful," I whispered. "If she's been doing this for 2 years without either of us suspecting, imagine what else she's capable of." Ethan nodded slowly, a grim understanding passing between us. "Then we'll be smarter. We'll get everything. Proof of every lie, every dollar, every trick she's pulled. And we'll use it." Something inside me shifted then. For so long I'd been surviving, one day at a time, keeping my head down. But now, with Ethan's determination burning right in front of me, I felt something else, a quiet, steady fire starting to grow. Anna thought I was helpless. She thought I was voiceless. She thought she could bury me under her lies forever. She was about to find out exactly how wrong she was. The next morning, the sound of a firm knock pulled me from a restless sleep. I shuffled to the door, still in my old robe, and when I opened it, Ethan was standing there. Not in his usual polished suit, but in jeans and a dark sweater. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept much, and in one hand, he held a heavy leather briefcase. "I've been on the phone since 6 a.m., he said, stepping inside without waiting for me to invite him. His tone was clipped, businesslike, but I could see the flicker of emotion underneath. "Grandma, I need you to get every piece of paperwork you have. Bank statements, bills, anything. We're going to lay it all out." I moved slowly, my bare feet cold against the linoleum floor, gathering what little I had. Unpaid medical bills. Final notices from the utility companies. A small stack of bank statements that showed numbers so low they were almost laughable. I set them all on the kitchen table, the same spot where I'd eaten my lonely dinners for the past 2 years. Ethan opened his briefcase and began pulling out neat stacks of printed documents. These are my transfer records to Anna's account. Every month, $8,000. Always on time, always with a note saying it was for your care. I even labeled it Grandma Fund, so there'd never be confusion. I stared at the papers, the neat columns of numbers. So much money. Money that had never touched my hands. He flipped through another stack, his jaw tightening. And here's where it actually went. I leaned forward, my eyes scanning the highlighted lines. Credit card payments for luxury stores. Transfers to a savings account in Anna's name. Payments to contractors. And then, in bold, $15,200. Home renovation. My mouth went dry. Renovation. Ethan nodded grimly. She told me it was for accessibility upgrades. Said you'd be staying with them for a while and they needed to make the guest bathroom safe for you. Grab bars, non-slip tiles, the works. I let out a slow, humorless laugh. I've never even stepped foot in that house, Ethan. He didn't smile. Instead, he pulled out his phone and scrolled through a series of messages. Look at this. Here's Anna, telling me last Christmas that you were finally able to refill all your prescriptions and buy a warm winter coat, thanks to my support. She even sent a photo here. He held up the screen. A heavy coat, brand new, draped over a chair. I felt my face flush with anger. That's not mine. Last Christmas I was wearing this, I said, tugging at the sleeve of the thin, pilled robe I'd worn to bed the night before. And I ate soup from a can because I couldn't afford a proper meal. Ethan's grip on the phone tightened. She's been fabricating everything. Groceries she bought for herself, medicine she picked up for her own family. She passed it off as things she was getting for you. And I believed her. His voice broke then, just slightly, and for the first time since yesterday, I saw not just his anger but his guilt. I thought I was taking care of you, Grandma. I thought you were comfortable. I reached across the table and took his hand. You were trying, Ethan. She's the one who twisted it. She's been playing us both. He squeezed my hand, but his gaze was steady now. Then it's time we start playing her back. I looked at the piles of paper between us, the cold, hard evidence of 2 years' worth of lies, and felt the first real spark of power I'd had in years. This was no longer just about surviving. This was about taking my life back. Ethan stayed for hours that day. The sun had set long ago, and the only light in the apartment came from the little lamp in the corner, casting a warm but tired glow over the kitchen table. Papers were spread out everywhere. Bank statements, receipts, phone screenshots, my unpaid bills. All of it like puzzle pieces to a terrible picture neither of us had wanted to see. He sat across from me, scrolling through messages on his phone, his brow furrowed in a way that made him look older than his years. Grandma, I think this goes deeper than just money. I felt my stomach tighten. What do you mean, deeper? He tapped the screen and turned it toward me. There was a text from Anna dated almost a year ago. I tried to bring Grandma to the neighborhood barbecue today, but she got overwhelmed and confused. It's best she stays home. Crowds are too much for her now. I stared at it, blinking. What barbecue? I never heard about any barbecue. That's the point, Ethan said quietly. She's been telling people you can't handle things anymore. She's isolating you. I leaned back in my chair, the weight of his words pressing on my chest. Ethan. Mrs. Kelly from next door. She used to invite me to everything. Birthday parties, her holiday dinners. But for the last 2 years, nothing. I thought maybe she got tired of me. Ethan shook his head. No. Anna made sure those invitations never reached you. He pulled out another printout, an email exchange. My neighbor had written to Anna about inviting me to her granddaughter's birthday party. Anna's reply was chilling. I don't think it's a good idea. She gets disoriented and upset in social situations now. I'd hate for her to feel embarrassed. I pressed my fingers against my lips. The memory of sitting alone that day came back to me. Watching the faint glow of balloons and hearing the distant laughter through my window. I'd told myself it was fine, that I didn't belong in big gatherings anymore. But it hadn't been my choice. And it wasn't just Mrs. Kelly. What about Aunt Laura? I asked suddenly. She used to call me every month. Then nothing. Not even a Christmas card last year. Ethan's expression hardened. She sent you a Christmas package last year. Grandma. Anna intercepted it and had it sent back. She told Aunt Laura you'd moved and didn't leave a forwarding address. And then she told her you'd asked not to be contacted anymore because it confused you. I gripped the edge of the table. She's cutting me off from everyone. So I'd only have her. He nodded slowly. That's how abusers work. They take away your support so you have nowhere else to go. And Grandma, he hesitated. She's been doing the same thing with your doctors. I frowned. My doctors. Ethan slid another document across the table. 6 months ago, she called your primary care physician and told them she was your official caregiver. She told them you were having memory problems and that all medical communication should go through her. That's why you haven't been getting calls or appointment reminders. She's been controlling all of that. I felt like the air had been sucked from the room. I thought the clinic just stopped calling me directly. I thought maybe it was normal. No, Ethan said firmly. She wanted to control your medical care because it gave her another way to prove her lie, that you're not capable of managing your own life. I sat there, stunned, as the realization settled in. She hadn't just stolen my money. She'd stolen my connections, my independence, my voice. Every time I'd wondered why people stopped calling, every time I'd thought I was simply getting forgetful. It was her, pulling the strings, shaping my world to fit her story. And then Ethan showed me the worst thing yet. He placed a thin report on the table. The top read, Adult Protective Services, Welfare Concern. I stared at it. What is this? She filed it last month, Ethan said, his voice low. She told them you were malnourished, confused, refusing help, that you were living in unsafe conditions. She asked them to do a welfare check. But no one came, I said faintly. They didn't because she told them the situation was under control. She gave them proof, fake medical updates, pictures of groceries, made-up appointment records. She positioned herself as the caring family member managing a difficult situation. I rubbed my temples, feeling dizzy. Why would she do that? Because if you ever tried to fight her, she could point to this report and say you weren't mentally fit to handle your own affairs. She was building a case to have you declared incompetent, Grandma. The words hit me like a punch. For a long time, I just sat there, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing outside. My apartment had always felt small, but tonight it felt like a cage, and I was finally seeing the bars. Ethan reached across the table and took my hand. His grip was steady, warm. She wanted total control over your life. But she made a mistake, too, actually. She underestimated me. And she underestimated you. I looked at him, really looked at him. My sweet grandson, who'd once run around my yard with scraped knees and grass stains, now staring at me with a fierce determination I didn't know he had. She's not going to win, he said quietly. I promise you that. And for the first time in 2 years I believed it. The next day, Ethan came back with a different kind of energy. Not the stunned, wounded look from before, but a calm, deliberate focus that told me he'd been thinking all night. He set his coffee on the table, pulled out a yellow legal pad, and clicked his pen. Grandma, he said, leaning forward, if we go at her head-on right now, she'll twist it. She's been doing this for 2 years. She's too good at lying to get caught in a simple argument. We need her to expose herself. I pulled my sweater tighter around me, watching his pen scratch across the paper. How? He glanced up at me, a small but dangerous smile touching his lips. We let her think she's winning. We give her exactly what she wants, and then we let her go too far to cover her tracks. I stared at him. You want me to play the part she's written for me? The confused old woman? He nodded slowly. Yes. Let her believe you're slipping. Ask the same questions twice. Forget small details on purpose. Make her confident enough to say those lies out loud while I'm recording. The more she talks, the more rope she gives herself. I hated the idea. Pretending to be weak, to be the helpless version of me she wanted everyone to see. It made my skin crawl. But as I thought about those stolen years, those cold nights and empty cupboards, the rage inside me settled into something sharper. If it gets her caught, I said finally, I'll do it. The first time I tried it was a few days later when Anna stopped by. She breezed in like she owned the place, carrying a bag with a loaf of bread and a half-empty carton of eggs. Cheap offerings that looked generous only if you didn't know the truth. Harriet, dear, she said in that syrupy tone, how are we today? I tilted my head slightly, as if confused. Oh, Are you staying for lunch? Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second before returning. No, sweetie, I meant you. How are you? I nodded slowly, looking around the room as if searching for something. I was just wondering, did Ethan ever say something about sending money? I thought I remembered. I let my voice trail off, frowning like I was struggling to grasp the thought. She moved quickly, crossing the room to pat my shoulder. Oh no. You must be thinking of something else. Ethan's so busy, you know. He wishes he could help more, but... She gave a gentle sigh, as if speaking about a child who couldn't live up to expectations. From the hallway, behind my bedroom door, I knew Ethan was listening, recording every word. I asked again, a few minutes later, pretending to forget I'd already brought it up. This time, she laughed softly, shaking her head. Oh, Harriet, your memory really is going. You probably dreamed it. Each time she dismissed me, I forced myself to stay small, to let her think she was in control. Inside, my heart was pounding. Not from fear, but from knowing that with each lie, she was digging her own hole deeper. Over the next 2 weeks, we gave her more chances. Ethan would text her asking for detailed updates about my care, and she'd respond with elaborate stories. The cardiologist says we need to monitor her blood pressure daily now, one message read. Another claimed she'd bought a new walker for me because my balance was getting worse. None of it was real. I hadn't seen a doctor in over a year, and I still walked the same as I always had. But she documented each lie as if she believed it herself, confident no one would question her. While she grew more careless, Ethan and I quietly worked on repairing the connections she'd tried to sever. I called my neighbor, Mrs. Kelly, and her shock was immediate. Harriet, I thought you didn't want visitors anymore. Anna said you got too tired. I called my cousin Laura in Portland, and she told me about the returned package, about Anna's claim that I'd moved away. I felt awful, Laura said. I thought maybe I'd upset you somehow. Each call was bittersweet, relief at hearing their voices again mixed with the anger of knowing how deliberately Anna had cut me off. But now, every conversation was also evidence. Every person who'd been lied to could testify to her manipulation. One afternoon, Ethan and I sat at the table going through the growing pile of proof. Phase 3, he said, tapping the folder. We let her believe she's on the verge of winning completely. That's when she'll make her biggest mistake. I sipped my tea, feeling the weight of what we were about to do. And then, his eyes locked with mine. Then we pull the rug out from under her. And we make sure she never gets back up. The weeks that followed were some of the hardest I'd lived through, but also the most focused. Every day, I played my role perfectly, forgetting things I'd just been told, acting confused over dates, even pretending to mix up names. It went against every fiber of my pride, but I reminded myself this was the only way to make her speak her lies out loud, over and over, with Ethan recording in the background. Anna seemed more confident than ever. She'd arrive with a carefully prepared expression of gentle concern, the kind of look you might give a fragile porcelain doll. Oh, Harriet, you forgot to take your morning pills again, she'd say in front of Ethan, even though I'd taken them right before she walked in. She'd sigh dramatically while glancing at him, like she was the only thing keeping me from falling apart completely. And she began to talk more openly about the next steps for my life. One Thursday afternoon, she sat across from me in my own living room, flipping through glossy brochures. I could see Ethan's phone recording from its spot on the shelf. These are some lovely assisted living communities, she began, her voice smooth and persuasive. They have memory care wings, professional staff, daily activities. You'd be so much safer there, Harriet. I looked at her with the soft, puzzled expression I'd practiced. Would I still see Ethan? Her lips curved into a patient smile. Of course, dear. But he's very busy, you know. It's better if you have people around who can meet your needs every day. You won't have to worry about bills, groceries, or remembering things. That last part made my stomach twist. She was weaving the idea into the story she'd built so carefully, that I was incapable of handling my own life. Ethan, who was pretending to scroll through his phone in the corner, asked without looking up, how would that work, exactly? Anna glanced at him like she was explaining something obvious to a child. Well, someone would need legal guardianship to make the necessary arrangements. It's a lot of responsibility, but I'd be willing to do it, for Harriet's sake. She said it like she was offering to carry some heavy, noble burden. But in my mind, I could see the truth. Guardianship would give her complete control. She could decide where I lived, how my money was spent, and who I could see. If she succeeded, I'd never have the chance to tell anyone what she'd done. I don't know, I murmured, letting my gaze drift away. Wouldn't that be a lot of trouble for you? Oh no, she replied quickly. Family takes care of each other. She reached over to pat my hand, and I fought the urge to pull away. Besides, Ethan's career is unpredictable. If anything happened to his income, I wouldn't want your care to be interrupted. I caught Ethan's jaw tighten at her words. She was planting seeds, making him sound unreliable, the same way she'd done with my friends and relatives. I could almost feel her building her case in her head, confident she was steering the conversation exactly where she wanted it to go. But what she didn't know was that every word was being saved. Over the next week, she doubled down. She called Ethan twice to tell him she was worried about me wandering outside in my robe, a complete fabrication. She texted him photos of my kitchen, claiming it was messy and unsafe, when in reality, she'd moved things around herself before snapping the picture. She even took a close-up photo of my pill bottles and told him she was concerned I was missing doses, never mentioning that she'd hidden my daily pill organizer in her bag before taking the shot. She's getting reckless, Ethan said one night as we reviewed the recordings together. The more she thinks we're buying her story, the bolder she gets. I nodded. That's because she thinks she's already won. It was true. She started spending more of the money openly. New jewelry, a leather handbag that looked like it cost half my monthly rent, a fresh coat of paint on her house. And she began talking to other family members about the burden of caring for me. Ethan showed me an email she'd sent to a cousin in another state. Harriet's condition is deteriorating quickly. We're doing everything we can, but the emotional and financial toll is exhausting. Any help, prayers, contributions, anything, would be deeply appreciated. Contributions, Ethan repeated with disgust. She's pulling money from other people now too. Every piece of it went into the folder we'd been building. Bank statements, intercepted invitations, falsified medical updates, fabricated photos, and now these new pleas for sympathy money. But the most telling moment came one rainy afternoon when she stopped by with a clipboard in hand. These are just a few forms we'd need to fill out if we go ahead with the assisted living plan, she said casually, flipping to a page with a bold title, Petition for Guardianship. I let my fingers hover over the paper, feigning hesitation. This is a lot of legal stuff. I don't really understand it. That's why you have me, she said warmly, sliding the pen toward me. All you'd have to do is sign. Before I could respond, Ethan stepped in, his voice light but firm. Why don't we set up a meeting to go over it together? That way I can understand exactly what's being signed. Her smile didn't falter, but something flickered in her eyes, just for a second. Of course, she said, slipping the papers back into her folder. I just thought it might make things easier. After she left, Ethan turned to me. That's it. That's the final piece. She's ready to take full legal control. Now we can end this on our terms. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the weight shift. The trap was ready. The night before we set the trap, my apartment felt different. The same worn furniture, the same hum from the old refrigerator, the same draft creeping under the window frame, but the air was heavier, charged, like the whole room knew something big was coming. Ethan sat across from me at the table, going through the folder one last time. Every piece of paper was in order. Bank statements highlighted in yellow, screenshots printed and stapled, recordings transcribed word for word. She's walking into this with no idea, he said quietly, almost to himself. I nodded, wrapping my hands around my tea mug, letting the warmth seep into my fingers. She's going to try and talk her way out of it. He gave a small knowing smile. She won't get the chance. The conference room has cameras, mics in the table, everything. She'll be her own undoing. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. I thought about the last 2 years, cold winters with no heat, dinners of stale crackers, phone calls that never came, invitations I never received. I thought about sitting here alone, wondering if Ethan had simply moved on with his life, when all along he'd been trying to help. And I thought about Anna's smile, the way she'd look me right in the eye while handing me a box of cheap tea, knowing full well she was robbing me blind. By morning, I wasn't nervous anymore. I was ready. Anna arrived at Ethan's office 15 minutes early, dressed like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Blonde hair perfectly smoothed, a fitted cream blazer, heels clicking against the marble floor. She carried a leather portfolio and a carefully arranged face of concern. From my seat in the reception area, I watched her check her reflection in the glass wall of the elevator before the receptionist led her down the hall. She didn't see me. Inside the conference room, Ethan was waiting. "Thanks for coming, Anna," he said with a polite, professional tone I'd never heard him use with her before. "I thought it was important we all talk together." When I walked in behind him, her eyes widened just enough for me to see it before the mask slid back into place. "Oh, Harriet, sweetie," she said, her voice honey-sweet but a little too high-pitched. "I didn't realize you'd be here. Are you feeling well enough for a meeting?" "I'm feeling sharper than I have in months," I said, my voice steady as I took the chair across from her. Ethan started laying papers out on the table. "I want to review the financial arrangements we've had for Grandma's care." He spread out the highlighted bank statements. "Over the last 2 years, I've transferred a total of $160,000 to accounts you control. You've assured me this money was spent on her medical needs, groceries, utilities." Anna smiled, nodding. "Yes, and you know how expensive those things can be." "Really?" I cut in, my eyes fixed on hers. "Which medical expenses exactly?" "Because according to my actual doctors," I tapped the stack of medical records, "I haven't had a specialist visit or prescription change in over a year." Her smile faltered. "Well, sometimes things aren't documented right away." Ethan slid another stack of papers toward her. "Or maybe because they never happened. Here's proof that every transfer went straight into your personal accounts, then into credit card bills for luxury purchases." Anna's fingers tightened on her portfolio. "That's not the whole story." I reached into my bag and pulled out the printed emails between her and Marcus Chen, the fake care coordinator she'd invented. "Is this the whole story? You created a fake business. Fake consultations. Fake invoices. All to make it look like you were paying for services I never received." Her eyes darted between me and Ethan, the calm starting to slip from her voice. "I was trying to help." "You were trying to control me," I said, leaning forward. "You isolated me from my friends, my family. You intercepted calls and invitations. You made people believe I was too confused to be trusted. And you almost convinced Ethan that I didn't want him in my life." Ethan placed the final document in front of her. "You even filed a report with Adult Protective Services claiming she was mentally unfit and needed intervention. You built an entire case to take legal guardianship so you could have full control over her and her money." Anna's face had gone pale. Her breathing was shallow now, her eyes scanning the room as though she might find an escape. But there wasn't one. From the small red light on the table, she must have realized it too. We were recording every second. Anna's fingers tapped the table in an uneven rhythm, her nails clicking softly against the polished wood. The sound was faint, but in the stillness of the conference room, it felt like a nervous drumbeat. She tried to sit tall in her chair, tried to hold her head high, but I could see the tightness in her jaw, the way her lips pressed together just a little too hard. "This is all being taken out of context," she said finally, her voice carrying that careful sweetness she always used when she wanted to sound reasonable. But underneath, there was a thin crack. "Caring for someone in Harriet's condition is complicated. I made decisions I thought were in her best interest." I held her gaze, letting the quiet stretch until it became uncomfortable. "In my best interest?" My voice came out steady, almost too steady. "You mean hiding invitations so I'd spend birthdays and holidays alone? You mean making sure I sat here freezing in winter because the heat bill couldn't be paid? You mean forcing me to choose between buying food or buying the medicine that keeps me alive, while you were out buying handbags and jewelry with the money my grandson sent to help me live?" Her shoulders stiffened. "You don't understand how hard it's been." Ethan's voice cut in, sharp enough to make her flinch. "No, Anna. You don't get to play the victim here. For 2 years, you've been running a calculated fraud. You didn't just take money. You built an entire false reality around my grandmother's life to justify it. You painted her as fragile, confused, unable to live without you. And you fed me that lie until I believed it." Anna's eyes darted to him, and I saw it, fear. Just a flash, quickly masked by the cool, patient expression she'd worn so many times before. Ethan, you know how proud she is. She would never accept help directly. I only stepped in to make it easier for everyone. Easier? His laugh was short, humorless. You told me she had a brand new winter coat last year. She didn't. You told me she was seeing a cardiologist regularly. She wasn't. You sent me receipts for groceries she never saw. Do you know what she had for Christmas dinner, Anna? He didn't wait for her to answer. Canned soup. Alone. For the first time since she walked in, she broke eye contact, her gaze flicking down toward her hands. The skin around her knuckles had gone pale from how tightly she was gripping her pen. This is getting dramatic, she said after a pause. If Harriet's living conditions were that bad, she could have told me. I leaned forward, my elbows on the table. Told you? You were the one creating them, Anna. And every time I tried to question you, you brushed it off, made me doubt myself. You made me think I was forgetful, that maybe I was imagining things that never happened. That's not care. That's manipulation. She shook her head quickly, the movement sharp. No, I was trying to protect you. From what? Ethan snapped. From the truth. The air in the room felt different now. Heavier, colder. Outside, muted office chatter floated past the thick glass walls. But in here, the only sounds were the faint hum of the ventilation and Anna's uneven breathing. She shifted in her seat, angling her body slightly toward the door, but Ethan's voice stopped her. Sit down, Anna. We're not finished. I reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope I'd brought. Slowly, deliberately, I spread its contents across the table. Letters from friends, family, neighbors. The paper edges caught in the overhead light. Every single one of these people was told I didn't want to see them anymore, I said, my voice calm but unwavering. That I was too confused, too unstable. You cut me off from everyone who might have actually helped me, because you wanted control. Her eyes scanned the names, and I saw recognition flicker across her face. She knew every one of them. Some of these people she'd smiled at in public, shared meals with, pretended to care about. And here's the part you don't know, I continued, leaning forward. They're all coming to see me this weekend. Every single one. They're going to see for themselves that I'm not confused. That I'm not declining. And that the only person lying to them was you. Anna's lips pressed into a thin line. Her fingers twitched like she wanted to reach for the letters, but she didn't dare. You can't prove, she started. We can prove everything, Ethan interrupted, sliding the thick folder toward her. His voice was calm now, but it carried a weight that made her sit back in her chair. Bank statements. Phone records. Intercepted emails and texts. Screenshots of your lies. Recordings of you describing medical visits that never happened. And now, this meeting. It's all on video. Every word you've said today is being recorded. Her eyes darted to the small red light on the table, and I saw the realization hit her. It will all be in the hands of the police, Ethan continued, the district attorney's office, and every single family member you've manipulated. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. The hum of the air conditioner grew louder, the outside world muffled. You can't do this, she said finally, her voice smaller now. We're family. I leaned closer, my voice low but clear. You stopped being family the moment you decided my dignity and independence were worth sacrificing so you could live off my pain. You took my grandson's love for me and twisted it into a weapon. And now you're going to answer for it. Her hands trembled. And for the first time, I knew the fear in her eyes wasn't just about what she'd done. It was about the fact that she was finally caught. Ethan's voice was quiet but final. You're going to face criminal charges, Anna. Elder abuse. Financial fraud. Mail tampering. And every person you lied to will know the truth. Her mask was gone now. She sat back, eyes fixed on the table, lips tight, shoulders rigid. She had nothing left to say. And for the first time in 2 years, I felt the air shift in my lungs. The power was no longer hers. The moment Anna walked out of that conference room, the tension in my chest loosened just enough for me to breathe deeply for the first time in years. She didn't slam the door or throw a tantrum. No, she walked out quietly, her heels clicking on the polished floor in a rhythm that sounded like retreat. But her silence wasn't surrender. I knew she'd spend the next few days scrambling for a way to save herself. Ethan watched her go, then turned back to me. We have to move fast. She'll try to twist this before it reaches the right people. I nodded. Then let's make sure it does. That afternoon, Ethan and I sat in his office, spreading every piece of evidence across the desk like we were piecing together a giant puzzle. We had the bank statements showing every transfer, the fake receipts, the fabricated medical reports. We had screenshots of emails and texts, recordings of her telling lies right into the camera. And most importantly, we had a pattern. Not one mistake or misunderstanding, but a clear, deliberate trail of deception and theft. Ethan started making calls. The first was to his lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Claire, who listened quietly as Ethan laid out the facts. "This is textbook elder financial abuse," she said finally. "We'll file a civil suit for the stolen funds and damages, and I'll refer you to a prosecutor I trust for the criminal side. The guardianship attempt strengthens the case. It shows clear intent to take over her life completely." Her calm confidence felt like a shield around us. For the first time, I believed Anna wouldn't just get away with what she'd done. Next, Ethan began calling family members, people I hadn't spoken to in years because of Anna's lies. The reactions were almost identical. Shock, guilt, and then fierce support. "Harriet, I'm so sorry," my cousin Laura said over the phone, her voice trembling. "Anna told me you didn't want visitors anymore. I should have checked. It wasn't your fault," I told her gently. "She made sure you believed it." By the end of the day, Ethan had a list of relatives and friends who were willing to provide statements. Some even had their own evidence: returned letters, blocked calls, intercepted packages. It turned out Anna's web of lies had touched far more people than just me. The following morning, Claire arranged for us to meet with the district attorney's office. The young assistant DA listened intently as we laid out our case, flipping through the evidence with growing interest. "This is strong," he said finally. "We can move forward with charges for elder abuse, fraud, and mail tampering. She's going to face serious consequences." I sat quietly, letting the words settle over me. Serious consequences. I'd heard that phrase before, but this time it wasn't a threat. This time, it was a promise. Over the next week, the tide shifted completely. Anna's calls to Ethan went unanswered. Her texts were saved straight to the case file. Family members she once charmed now avoided her entirely, some even blocking her number. She'd gone from being the self-proclaimed caretaker to the subject of hushed conversations and pointed stares. And in the middle of all this, something unexpected happened. On Saturday afternoon, my apartment filled with the sound of voices I hadn't heard in far too long. Laura arrived first, carrying a basket of fresh bread and flowers. Mrs. Kelly from next door came next, followed by my childhood friend Marlene, who'd driven in from 2 towns over. They all came inside like the years of separation had been a bad dream, their arms wrapping around me one after another. "I'm so glad you're still you," Marlene whispered, her voice breaking. "I thought I'd lost my friend." "You didn't," I said softly, hugging her tighter. "She just made it look that way." We sat in the living room for hours, catching up, laughing, crying. They told me how Anna had intercepted invitations, returned gifts, even answered my phone pretending to be me. Every new story made me both angrier and more certain that confronting her had been the only choice. By evening, the apartment felt warmer than it had in years. Not from the heat, but from the people in it. I realized then that Anna hadn't just stolen money. She'd stolen time. Precious, irreplaceable time. And now, piece by piece, I was taking it back. Before everyone left, Ethan pulled me aside. "The DA's moving quickly. You'll probably have to testify, but we've got enough to make sure she can't twist this." I smiled faintly. "After what she's done, I'll be ready." That night, I sat by the window, watching the lights in the distance. For the first time, I didn't feel small or trapped. I felt steady, strong. Anna's downfall wasn't complete yet, but the life she'd built on lies was crumbling, and soon, it would all come down. Anna's trial didn't take years like I'd feared. Once the evidence was in the hands of the DA, the case moved forward with a speed that almost surprised me. The recordings from the conference room were the nail in her coffin. Her voice, her face, her own words weaving the net she couldn't escape. I didn't see her again until the preliminary hearing. She walked in wearing a muted gray suit, her hair pulled back tightly, the confident shine in her eyes replaced with something colder, resentment, maybe. She didn't look at me, not once, But I didn't need her to. I knew she could feel my presence just as I felt hers. When the charges were read, elder abuse, financial fraud, mail tampering, she sat stone still. Her attorney tried to spin a story about miscommunication and good intentions, but every time they offered an excuse, the prosecutor had proof ready. The bank transfers. The fake invoices. The intercepted letters. The recordings. It was like watching a wall crumble one brick at a time, and with every brick that fell, I felt lighter. 2 months later, Anna took a plea deal. She would serve time in prison, pay restitution for the stolen funds, and be permanently barred from acting in any fiduciary or caregiving role for the rest of her life. She would also have a permanent criminal record, a scar she couldn't charm her way out of. I didn't feel joy when I heard the sentence. I didn't feel pity either. What I felt was peace. The kind that comes when you've been holding your breath for too long and can finally exhale. Life after Anna wasn't perfect. It never would be. You can't get back the years someone stole from you. But slowly, I rebuilt what she'd tried to destroy. Ethan made sure my finances were safe, setting up safeguards so no one could ever take advantage of me again. My friends returned, my home was warm, and the phone calls I got were from people who loved me, not people pretending to care. One afternoon, I sat in my kitchen with Marlene, sipping tea. Sunlight poured through the window, casting a golden glow over the table. She reached across and squeezed my hand. "You're stronger than I ever knew," she said softly. I thought about that. About how Anna had tried to make me believe I was weak, helpless, dependent. And about how, in the end, it was my voice, steady, clear, unshakable, that had helped bring her down. Here's what I learned, and what I want anyone listening to remember. Evil doesn't always come with a scowl or a raised voice. Sometimes it smiles at you, pours you a cup of tea, and says it's for your own good. But if something feels wrong, if someone makes you doubt yourself, isolates you, or takes control of your life, speak up. Tell someone. You are never too old, too proud, or too inconvenient to deserve the truth. Family is not defined by blood alone. It's defined by the people who protect you, respect you, and stand by you when it matters most. Ethan once asked me if the $8,000 a month helped me. And now, I can answer him honestly. Yes, but not because of the money. Because it reminded me that I was loved, worth fighting for, and never truly alone.